Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1025 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. But before we get into it, I want to remind you guys about Revujo's shop. Link will be in the description and pinned in the comments. You guys enjoy the drawing speed art, which sometimes isn't as fast as Revujo wants it to be. And just enjoy the art in general. Please check this out. Revujo is undefeated. But anyway, the last few chapters have felt really long, where the chapter just is so jam-packed with different groups, factions, events, reveals, right? The chapter just kept going on and on. This chapter was kind of the opposite of that, where, man, it was like a rush, and then it was over. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. So we start off the chapter with Luffy trying to fly on Momonosuke. Luffy is yelling at him, but I thought Oda was pretty consistent here. Momo can't. It was also just really enjoyable because it was funny. You guys know I'm writing my story right now, so it allows me, I think, to better appreciate all of the small moments of creativity that it takes to, sort of include and ripen the story. And so just a little thing like, Momo doesn't want to raise his head because his head is too far off the ground. It almost feels like flying. That's kind of underrated. And it's such a small moment, really. But I would say the thing that I like most about this scene is what it communicates as far as the story going forward to me, at least how I read it. Luffy says, I don't care if you're scared of flying or if you're frozen. You wimp, you're a grown-up now. How are you still scared of heights? And Momo's like, keep your insolent thoughts to yourself. Samurai fear nothing. But it's like a re-emphasis on the fact that Momo is now grown up, quote unquote, right? But nothing about him has changed, and that's the way that it should be. What Momo needs to really mature and become an adult isn't how he looks. It's his, it's mental, right? And also this last line where Momo says, keep your insolent thoughts to yourself. Samurai fear nothing. This sticks out to me mainly because of the last chapter where Yamato, coincidentally as a child, said something very similar to the samurai in the cave, where they're like, we're samurai, we don't need to eat. And Yamato believed them. Well, I need to eat, I feel hungry, therefore I'm not a samurai. I think that you can imagine Yamato for some time after this, and maybe even till this day, would try so hard to not feel hunger and feel frustrated because she feels hungry. Because this becomes a criteria of being a samurai and she wants to be a samurai. Momonosuke right now is in that same sort of phase, dealing with a similar issue, where it's about not feeling fear. He wants so badly to be a samurai, and to him a samurai doesn't feel fear. He doesn't yet get it. And following up on the example of samurai don't feel hunger, this has been explored a lot with Momonosuke from Punk Hazard, and I feel like there's elements of this which hold some truths that Momo has yet to really fully understand. Remember, all through Punk Hazard, Momo refused to eat because these people's foods weren't trustworthy. Momo probably thought, as a samurai, it shouldn't be a big deal to refuse this untrustworthy food because samurais don't feel hunger. And Momo actually had the willpower in order to refuse the Straw Hat's food at the end of the arc. Sanji hands him a bowl and he literally says, no, I'm not hungry. Of course that wasn't true, but that's what he was willing to do. I think Momo had the willpower in order to die for what it is that he thought that he believed in. He was actually going to starve to death, which is incredible and a feat in my opinion. But ultimately he doesn't because of Kinemon. Kinemon sort of understands the struggle within Momonosuke, and Kinemon is a samurai. And so as Momo refuses the bowl, Kinemon steps in and just starts pigging out. Of course, on one hand, he's trying to tell Momonosuke, hey, these are people that we can trust. So there's no reason why we can't eat the food. But as it's sort of revealed later, right, they still didn't fully trust the Straw Hats until much later. Lots of secrets were kept. So with that in mind, I think Kinemon actually revealed the truth about eating the food in the next panel, where he says to Momonosuke, let us choose to live. They didn't trust the Straw Hats. Kinemon was eating because he was hungry, and he wanted Momonosuke to do the same. In this way, you sort of have a lesson from a samurai about the true nature of samurai. Momo, or Yamato, says, well, samurai don't feel hunger. Momo sort of echoed that same take, but there we have Kinemon, a samurai, who's contradicting that intentionally. I kind of think that we need a similar moment from Momonosuke from the samurai about fear. I'm not sure exactly how that will happen, but certainly there will be many opportunities for such a declaration from a samurai that Momonosuke respects, basically admitting to feeling fear. And the real journey for Momonosuke, I think for him as a child, really the biggest hurdle he needs to overcome is understanding why. Why do the samurai claim to not feel hunger? Why do they claim to not feel fear? Why are these elements of being a samurai when they do feel these things? This is something only life experience can really teach Momonosuke. Going back to Punk Hazard, after Momonosuke, or while Momonosuke is eating the food, he cries. And this is something that Oda doesn't explain, right? You could have many different people could have many different interpretations for why Momonosuke is crying, and it could be many things at once. For instance, thinking about their journey, thinking about the ones that they lost, simply enjoying the food. It's so good that they have to cry, right? All these things could be true. But now there's an additional element in my mind of, maybe Momonosuke, as he eats the food and he's crying, he's sort of, the truth of him not being a samurai in his own mind is dawning on him. Or maybe he thinks that this is a moment of weakness. And it could be that Kinemon thinks the very same thing. Anyway, the next part of the chapter centered around Kaido and Yamato's fight. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we talked about it in the last chapter and really nothing has changed, but since this was a Yamato battle fight, it just reinforces what we learned in the last chapter, that Yamato is incredibly strong. And Yamato is not only showing up Zoro right now, Yamato might be showing up Luffy. I think that there's a fair argument to say that Yamato at the start of this arc was definitively stronger than Luffy, and while Luffy might grow to surpass Yamato during the course of the events that follow here, plus the King's Hockey stuff, and maybe, there's all sorts of reasons why Luffy could get stronger, but still, you're talking like, as far as the allied forces right now, Luffy is 1A, and Yamato is 1B, and Zoro is back there. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you guys that leaves me with a weird feeling. I know that a lot of people talk about the Sanji-Zoro rivalry as if that's an actual rivalry. I've never really seen it that way. I've always put Zoro on a pedestal higher than Sanji, and in my mind, Zoro is more comparative to Luffy. And the main reason why I think this is justified in my mind is everybody in the crew has something that they do. Even Sanji, right? He's a very powerful fighter for sure, but he's also the cook, Chopper's the doctor, Nami's the navigator, Frankie's the shipwright, so on and so forth, musician. But Zoro, his role is swordsman, is fighter. And his dream relates to fighting. And the only one who's similar to that would be Luffy. And so it's always made sense for those two to sort of separate themselves and become the world's literal strongest fighters, period. You had someone like Yamato, who is clearly on their level and then goes forward on the journey with the Straw Hats to improve as well, and it gets weird to me. The ironic thing about me saying this is I think at this point, Yamato is pretty much the ideal for what a lot of outspoken people want for the next Nakama candidate. First off, female, or feminine body, check. You have powers, interesting new powers, on the level of the monster trio. These are all things people actually wanted, and so if Oda actually gave that to us, it would probably be fan service. This is of course the same group of people that absolutely despised Rebecca and Vivi as potential members of the crew, in large part because they weren't strong enough. I personally agreed that Rebecca shouldn't have been in the crew for other reasons. Vivi, however, I'm always kind of salty against people who are against Vivi joining. I know it didn't actually happen, so they're validated in some way, but Vivi's in the crew in my heart. She never had to be a top tier fighter for me. But anyway, the point I'm sort of illustrating here is it would be ironic if Yamato doesn't join the crew and ends up being bait because she is too strong. Yeah, you get it. But we'll obviously see how it plays out, and I'm really excited anyway. I think at the conclusion of this arc, we're going to get something interesting. I think Oda's sort of proven here, especially with Sanji during the arc, that when he wants to, He will go through every possible corner and do circles and loop-de-loops to try and get us off the trail of what exactly that he wants to do, because he wants to surprise us. And I feel that way regarding this. I feel like Oda's going to at least do his best to keep us guessing. And even if he's not successful in doing that for other people, he's successfully done it to me. So, but yeah, let's focus on what was, I felt like, truly the greatest reveal of this chapter. Greatest reveal that isn't speculation at this point in time. Oda's giving us insight into Kaido that we have been waiting for hundreds of chapters, and he did it almost subtly, I felt like. Whereas I was reading the chapter and it was happening, and I didn't realize it was happening until you get to the end and you're like, wait a second, Yamato and Kaido are Oni. And then you think about it, and you think about all the dialogue leading up to that reveal, and you're like, wait a second, Oda was actually saying something. This dialogue, which I kind of read and was like, okay, this is mildly interesting, wasn't useless after all. That was my experience anyway. But yeah, Oda leans into it here, where he says that you can't escape your blood. It doesn't matter what you do, the samurai will never consider you one of them. And Yamato's like, what does that have to do with anything? And I felt the same way. Like, Kaido, what are you trying to say, man? Why does it matter if the samurai accept you? Why does Kaido care? And then Kaido goes on, you spend your entire life running around this island, crawling through attics, desperately trying to escape because you're alone. And Yamato's like, you don't know me, man. Like, you don't know what I've been doing. She says, I have, and then backtracks and says, I had friends. We can see in the backdrop a silhouette or a flashback type panel with Ace. And then Kaido mentions the samurai and says, everyone that shows you compassion ends up dead. And then we get a flashback with Yamato where someone did something nice to her and then was executed. At this point in time, I felt kind of annoyed because Kaido's like, everyone that shows you compassion ends up dead, as though like framed in a way of, you know, it's Yamato's fault for this. And as I was reading it, I was like, well, Kaido, you executed them. So, you know, how you kind of self-fulfilling prophecy there. You can really argue that Yamato can't be friends with a samurai. When she tries to be friends with a samurai, they try to be friends with her and you execute them. Actually, in retrospect, I kind of use this or try to interpret this as maybe Kaido didn't intend for her to learn that he had executed them. I don't know how likely that is, but that's how my brain wants it to make sense, because otherwise it's a pretty poor argument. Kaido then goes on to say that their acts of kindness were just lies, and I feel like this argument would have more power, would be more persuasive if there's an actual example from Yamato's life where a samurai tried to betray them or lie to her. But we don't see any of that. And then we finish with the reveal. After all, you could easily use your power to impose your will on others. You're the offspring of an Oni. Relying on the friendship of humans is beneath you. That is your lot in life, Yamato. So it's at this point that you take the conversation in context. A lot of what Kaido said doesn't apply to Yamato at all. In fact, they're almost explicit examples of Kaido preventing Yamato from forming any connections with humans or allowing humans to betray or lie to her. As I said, it's subtle, but I think Oda is revealing that this is Kaido's great fear, because this isn't Yamato's life experience, it is Kaido's. Humans' acts of kindness towards Kaido were just lies. The truth is that the people were all afraid of Kaido. Kaido feels like he is alone. Kaido feels like he can't escape the truth of his blood. It doesn't matter what he does, the humans would never consider him one of them. Now that it's confirmed that Kaido is an Oni, which is clearly a different kind of race, and we'll talk more about this in a second, but now that it's confirmed that he's another one of the tribes or races of the One Piece world, this seems to me like a continuation of the same themes regarding the fishmen. And at the same time, there's the implication, right, that Kaido has been sheltering Yamato to prevent her from going through the same things which cause his problems. He's in fact trying to be a good father. It really reminds me of Queen Otohime from Fishman Island, where, you know, she understands the prejudices that existed within the fishermen and mermen communities against humans, but she absolutely hated it when they spread this hatred to the children, which is precisely, it seems like, what Kaido has done or has tried to do to Yamato. Most likely, if you would ask me, this is speculation, because he values Yamato as family. They're both Oni. they share this lot in life. As I said in the last chapter reaction, Oda has repeatedly emphasized the concept of, as far as Yamato is concerned, that Kaido would kill Yamato. That's like a discussion point. Oda brings it up. Yamato can't believe it. Would Kaido actually kill his child? And I'm really personally gearing myself up for the reveal at some point in time that although Kaido puts on a very mean front, I don't think he would actually do that. And that's the surprise. And if you assume what I said here is true, that Kaido's not speaking about Yamato's experience, he is speaking about his own experience, it really paints Kaido out as a hurt figure, somebody who is only what he is now because he was betrayed. That essentially his life experience has corrupted him. And personally, I'd been expecting something like that for a long time already, simply because Kaido is drinking and, there's clear issues. Kaido has issues. Creates this character that has a soft spot, or could have one. But yeah, as far as the actual thing that occurred to Kaido, it could have been many small things. We obviously assume that he was captured by the Marines and then experimented on. We don't know the exact circumstances of that. Maybe he trusted someone. Could relate to Rocks. It could relate to Big Mom or all of them. That seems like an imminent reveal. But I want to talk more specifically about the Oni. I'm just going to be straight up with you guys. I think that the Oni race is a race that already exists within the One Piece world that we have seen on at least several occasions already. And essentially, Oni is the race of Magellan and Hannibal and of Impel Down. This race in the past was called the Demon Race or something to that effect, but I think that Oda is canonically giving this race a name. It would also be very fitting. Kaido says you cannot escape the truth of your blood. He goes on to say, after all, you could easily use your power to impose your will on others. You're the offspring of an Oni. Relying on the friendships of humans is beneath you. That is your lot in life. Just frankly, I think that for the Oni race to exist within the world government in Impel Down, where you have these Oni who control and impose their power and will over human prisoners, makes a ton of sense to me. And this was also pointed out to me by Revujo, and this could be some pretty incredible foreshadowing. We see a panel of Kaido going full like demon. He looks intense, and he's holding his club above his head, and he's highly shadowed, or shaded in. And this panel is very similar to a panel that we see in Impel Down of the cow jailer. The cow, obviously, and most of the jailers, I believe, all held clubs like Oni do. The interesting thing here is that all of these were awakened zoan users, and so, it's easy to say, well, they're not Oni, right? Because we see them. It's a cow, it's a koala, right? But they could be fully transformed into their zoan forms, therefore we can't actually see what kind of race they would have been. You can say it's more likely that they're humans, but that's a theory just like anything else. As far as I am aware, there is no cow race of people. Side note though, all of a sudden I'm excited for Kaido to sort of take the form of the jailers. They were supposedly awakened zones, right? Well, Kaido, you'd expect Kaido to be awakened too, so maybe we'll see a dragon form of this. I wonder if they are more Oni, like Magellan. At least the club is very fitting, and that's what Oda was going for in Impel Down, is that's what those characters represented, and now we have an actual race. Also, another side note, I'm personally assuming that Yamato is half Oni, right? Kaido kind of beats around the bush here, says you have the blood of an Oni, but doesn't actually say that she is 100% Oni. He says you're the offspring of an Oni, which then would suggest, right, that Yamato's mother was a human, which also suggests perhaps other kinds of drama if Kaido has this thing against humans. Anyway, this is my personal headcanon as for right now. The only other possibility, right, Big Mom revealed this in this arc, that there are 3 missing races from Totland. One of them we know is the Giants, the other we know is King's Race Lunarians, and there's this third one that's missing. So it is possible, right, that Magellan's race is something else, and then the Oni is very special and rare like King's Race, and Kaido is essentially the last purebred of his kind. Yamato, his child, is half. That's technically possible. I'm gonna bring it up. I don't think so. Actually, the 24th son of Big Mom has bat wings, similar to Magellan. Magellan also has bat wings. We also know Magellan has horns, and horns seems to be like the identifying feature of Kaido, right? That all of his subordinates, he has them wear horns so that they represent his race, and Yamato, as his child, even if she is half human, also has horns. Well, Magellan has horns too, so maybe there's some variation, like the minks, you know? There's where some of them have wings, and others, like Kaido, don't. Big Mom's child, which is half something, has the wings, but doesn't have the horns. But anyway, we continue the chapter, and we get back to Luffy and Momonosuke. Momonosuke can't actually open his eyes in order to fly, so he's flying completely blind, and Luffy's trying to direct him. So rather than end up on the roof, they go through the building, and everybody sees them. Marco is undefeated, by the way. The whole point of this, obviously, Oda was very methodical, making Momo go through every floor and every wall so that everybody saw him, and Luffy it confirms that Luffy is still alive, and that's probably going to have an effect on the battlefield and his mythos. They also get to see Momonosuke. The funniest moment for me personally was when Momo went through the floor and Big Mom is there, and Big Mom's like, Kaido? Big Mom is actually dumb enough to believe that that was Kaido, so Luffy is riding Kaido. The thought of Big Mom actually believing that makes me chuckle. And because Big Mom is dumb enough to actually believe that, then it offers Oda the opportunity to have Big Mom act on that assumption, so I hope that is true. I wouldn't count on it, but I hope that is true. Another really funny moment for me, Yamato was like, huff huff, all serious, I won't let it end like this, and in the background of the panel you can see Momonosuke cresting over the hill. Kaido's like, Part of me wants to believe that Kaido actually sees this happening, and his brain has decided that he is hallucinating. But yeah, Yamato goes for an attack, and Luffy and Momo appear at the same time. Luffy goes Gear 4th Snake Man, and Oda was, I felt like, kind of deceptive about it, because it was really hard to make out Snake Man. And then the actual panel of punching Kaido, he's not in the frame, and then we come back to him riding Momonosuke, and he's no longer in Snake Man. It just feels like maybe Oda is hiding something. I'm not 100% sure of that, but it definitely feels that way because it was unnecessary. I feel like he should highlight Snake Man. Everyone would be so hyped to have seen that drawn more clearly. And then we have the dragon face off at the very end, Kaido and Momonosuke. Kaido asks, and who is this dragon? And Momo he nuts up for a moment here, and he says, my name is Kozuki Momonosuke. I am the man who will be the Shogun of Wano. I really liked all of this. I don't know about you guys, but I got the sense that now that Momonosuke has aged, there is at least some effect on his confidence. This is something that he wouldn't have said earlier. And the only thing that's really changed is he's now an adult. He's also a big dragon like Kaido, so maybe that's helping him. At the same time, Momonosuke says, I am the man who will be the Shogun of Wano, which is a dream, like a lot of the Straw Hats would have. You guys know that I want Momo to be an ancient weapon, number one, and then number two, to travel with the Straw Hats, and sort of soul searching and an attempt to become somebody who he believes is worthy of being the Shogun of Wano. That's his sort of character. That's how I see that happening. And so this is potentially evidence for it. Of course, I could just be making this up, and maybe at the end of this arc, Momo just becomes the Shogun of Wano, but that feels unsatisfying to me. Now that he's stated it as such, it's almost something that we need more progress to get to. Not simply Luffy and whoever else defeating Kaido and then getting the enemy out of the way, and then I'm the Shogun now. That just would be unsatisfying. For Momonosuke to truly earn it, he's got to experience more. And look, I don't want you to be confused. I know that Momonosuke has stated his dream of becoming the Shogun before. That's something that he has exclaimed like this before. But as you put it side by side next to Luffy saying, I want to be the Pirate King, Momo, then I'm going to be the Shogun, I start to interrelate those two things as like not a thing that will happen, but a thing that must be earned, potentially together. But if Momonosuke does earn it in this arc, a theory that I saw last week that I really, really liked, is Momonosuke has his own version of an Hour of Legends, where, Odin held up his subordinates in boiling oil for an hour, while Momonosuke holds up the island of Onigashima under some duress or circumstance, damage he's taking something for a very long time. thereby protecting the flower capital so it could be evacuated or something else. And then maybe after that he earns it. I would have to be in the moment to sort of feel it, but I definitely want to throw that theory out there because it seems good to me. But yeah, without getting sidetracked here, my agenda definitely is that Momonosuke joins the Strats, or probably more accurately travels with the Strats in a capacity similar to Oden, which, side note, is kind of the same theory that people have about Yamato, since Yamato also wants to be Oden. I think it would be more fitting for Momonosuke to sort of walk down his father's path, just because of how much it's been explained to us that he really resents himself and who he is. The way that Yamato and Momonosuke both want to be Oden is actually different, where Momonosuke constantly compares himself to Oden and deems himself unworthy, whereas Yamato is just like, I'm ready to be Oden, and I don't think Yamato has thoughts of being unworthy. And I find Momo's version of this more compelling. So a big reason why people don't like that theory is basically because Momonosuke is a child, right? Child is weak, and people don't like weak people joining the Strats. Well, now Momo is an adult, which could be funny in and of itself, right? A very unique thing to add to the crew. Obviously, I assume that he will be de-aged at some point, but we don't know when that'll happen. So now, as an adult, with his dragon form, Momonosuke is probably not too weak to join the crew, because I presume that there are special qualities of being a dragon. Like, for instance, invulnerability, or very near that. Maybe even without hockey. Dragon scales are supposed to be really hard. I think, just simply being an adult dragon could put Momonosuke on a pretty high tier as far as defense is concerned. I think he'll probably unlock Blast Breath. I really think that Vegapunk's artificial fruit is pretty much an exact replica, or very, very close to the real deal. It is legit. And here we have, sort of put side by side, why Momonosuke, or the great reason why Momonosuke has to join the crew, is because he wants to be the Shogun. And it's pretty much telegraphed, although I don't think it's been explicitly said, that Momonosuke probably sees the Shogun as a representation of his father. Essentially, to be like Oden would be to be worthy of being the Shogun. And while it could be handed to him at the end of the arc, where Luffy essentially solves all his problems, there could exist in Momonosuke's mind the understanding that, hey, I'm still 8 years old even if I look like an adult, and so now I need to go earn it. I need to earn becoming the Shogun. Not just for the people, because the people are all probably going to say, yeah, Momonosuke, we're ready for you to become the Shogun, but earn it for himself. But the other half of my want for Momonosuke is that he is an ancient weapon. I say it's a want, right? I just want Momonosuke to be interesting and special in some hype way. And that's kind of how my mind makes sense of it, but it could be another way too that I haven't thought of. Just as so long as the time spent invested in Momonosuke is not just paid off here, but paid off long term. So he has a role to play besides, just being a kid in the Shogun of Wano. Like, I want his powers that are revealed in Zou I want to see how that connects. So at the end of the chapter, Kaido says, "You're the brat, how unexpected. The world doesn't need another dragon." You guys know I've been hyping up when Kaido would meet Momonosuke for a long time. I thought Kaido would have some kind of interesting reaction to Momonosuke in dragon form. And we've actually got to the chapter, and whether or not that reaction has been fulfilled or not is very much unclear. You guys let me know if this is just me and I'm projecting my wants, my expectations onto the story, or you see this the same way that I do. But when I read "this world doesn't need another dragon," I take that as an implication that being a dragon is important. It's almost as if Kaido is saying that he cares to be the only dragon. Another dragon is like a threat to him in some way. Like, there's a lot of things Kaido could say, but this one, it caught my attention. And Yamato's reaction caught my attention too, where before Yamato knows who this is, right? She says, "A peach dragon." That was her words. A peach dragon, could it be? Right? And we're supposed to believe that Yamato is sort of putting it together. Oh, this must be Momonosuke, right? But why would she think that this giant dragon is Momonosuke? She hasn't seen Momonosuke in dragon form. My theory, guys, to sort of bring this around and jump to conclusions, my theory is that Oden's prophecies, or the prophecies in general, mention a dragon. and Kaido is sort of taking ownership of the role of the dragon in those prophecies. Yamato, having read Oden's journal, would know these same things, and Momonosuke, being a dragon, is a threat. Kaido has hinted on multiple occasions that he's in Wano for a reason, that there's something that he's trying to do, and it would make sense if he got the dragon fruit, then learned a dragon is supposed to do something, and then it's like sort of trying to accomplish it in his own way. But now Momonosuke is here as another dragon, so there's another candidate to do this awesome thing, whatever it is. That's my personal theory. Whether it's true or not, obviously we'll find out probably pretty soon. I would expect that at any rate. And this has been on my mind as well, and this relates to Momonosuke is an ancient weapon. And the way that he would be an ancient weapon essentially is if the dragon fruit, Kaido's dragon fruit, is an ancient weapon, and Momonosuke's is a copy of that ability. But in Fishman Island, Otohime says, when talking to Shirahoshi, along with that special mermaid will come one who can guide her to use her power for good. Shirahoshi is obviously Poseidon, so somebody's going to come and guide her to use her power for good. That's obviously Luffy. And I was reminded of that reading the chapter, as Momonosuke is traveling with his eyes closed, and Luffy is the one to guide him, or at least try to. Otohime also says that if Poseidon's power was used maliciously, it could sink the entire world. It's a formidable power that can be utterly destructive. I was thinking about this, and there's a really interesting coincidence here. The great fear of Poseidon's power is sinking the world. Well, what does Kaido's dragon fruit allow him to do? It allows him to float islands. It's almost like literally the exact opposite power. Yet as we see it here in Wano, this power is being used for destruction, lifting an entire island to drop it on a city. Well, what if Kaido could lift an even bigger island? And so here's the thing that's most distinct to me about Poseidon's power, is that you don't need somebody individually strong in order to use the power of Poseidon in order to wreak havoc on the world. What's interesting about this is that if Momonosuke's artificial devil fruit from Vegapunk, the dragon fruit, is a pretty much exact copy of Kaido's fruit and is comparable in almost every way, we will find out if somebody without any real fighting skills can use this power to do some pretty incredible things like drop islands on city, or the reverse of that, and stuff of that nature. I mean, I think that the devil fruit alone, just given to the weakest person on the planet, it could be ancient weapon worthy, or another way of phrasing that is a power capable of, quote, destroying the world. And here's the last thing that I want to talk about. We know Momonosuke and Zou, his special ability, was able to hear and control Zunisha. So whatever makes Momonosuke special has got to have something to do with that. And so for the longest time, people assumed that that was Momonosuke's power. More recently, I've argued maybe that's the power of the artificial dragon fruit. Essentially, a low-key confirmation. Odo's very subtle about it, but we'll learn in retrospect that was confirmation that Vegapunk's fruit was legit. Well, if Momonosuke has that power because of his fruit, and the fruit is a copy of Kaido's, then Kaido would have the same power. So do we have any foreshadowing of Kaido being able to command creatures? And potentially we do. At the very beginning of this arc, we can see the Beast Pirates trying to round up Tama's Komainu. And what the Beast Pirates have to say is really interesting. They say that they need to go get the Komainu. And in fact, they wanted the baboon to kill the Komainu despite the consequences. So there would be consequences for killing the animal. Tenguyama Hitetsu also tells Tama that her powers would be desirable to the Beast Pirates, who also, keep in mind, had also tamed or had a baboon. So there's an interest in the Beast Pirates having animals. We also know that there are mountain gods in Wano, which will likely show up or play some role at some point in time as well. So there will definitely be an opportunity to sort of illustrate Kaido's interest in creatures, potentially relating to his devil fruit powers, and we could also see an instance of Kaido using the same ability as Momonosuke and Zou, or commenting on it when it is used when a mountain god or another creature appears. for now, this is obviously food for thought. A lot of people need more before they believe this, but this is definitely where my mind goes. I can't really help it. And I do think that this would be a really interesting turn of events, but obviously we'll have to wait and see, and I think the answers might come even sooner than I expect. But yeah, this was a really, really good chapter of One Piece, leading up to even better ones to follow. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think, whether you know something from the chapter that I might have missed. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.